How's it going, Hewman? So today I'm going to show you how you can take a solid chunk of brass and engrave it on a CNC. So today I'm going to be making 3 different stamps. I'm going to be making one wide logo, one round logo, and my little button emblem, and they're going to be used for a few different purposes. I want to make 1 or 2 stamps that I can, into some wood. But also, I do leather work from time to time and make some pretty cool, fun things. And I want to make sure that my brand and my logo is on those. And I could use a laser engraver, but sometimes heat embossing is just going to work a whole lot better. And I also just picked up a heat embosser from Tandy Leather, which is going to do a really good job at, stamping the leather. Now, the tricky thing with making a stamp for a heat embosser like this is you need to make a plate that slides in these grooves, like that. So I'm going to show you guys how to mill in these little shoulder guys, and then also the tools, the feeds, the speeds, and all that I'm going to use to actually engrave my stamp into the brass. Some bits will be big bits, some bits will be very, 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 very small, 1/32 of an inch. So let's finally get into it. All right, so I'm starting out here with a piece of, it's about 7.5, 8" by 2" by 3/4 inch piece of brass, and it's kind of milled. So I took a couple little smoothing passes off of this with big chunky 2" end mill. And one thing to be really, really careful of, if you are using a big end mill, you need to be careful and realize what you are doing for your work holding to hold the brass onto your table. Because I've never been a proponent of the double-sided tape and crazy glue, super glue, CA glue trick. But the reason why you need to be careful with your work holding is if you are using a big flat end mill like this, you're going to be imparting heat into your material. And that heat is going to warm up, and I like using hot glue, and it can actually heat up the hot glue so much that the material will release from your wasteboard. So you don't want that. So for flattening, I actually like a 1/2" end mill because it's going to make a chip. And when you make a chip, the heat gets imparted into the chip and then flies off, so your workpiece doesn't actually heat up as much. So long story short, I actually need to take a 1/4 inch off of some of this, and I'm gonna be doing that with an end mill, but we're gonna get there. And then I'll do like 1 or 2 flattening final passes with this big bit. So make chips as much as you can instead of just skimming the surface. One thing I found. So as my glue gun warms up, I'm gonna get this mounted up. So I am gonna be using a 1/4 inch O-flute bit. And what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna cut out the profile that I want for my stamp. Mainly just so I have less material that I'm working with to flatten down, and I can then do some better work holding. So I ran a straight line with a V-bit onto this extra piece of wasteboard, so I know what is straight hot glue. You do have to be careful if you're gonna get cutting into the hot glue, it's gonna gum up your bit. What I'm doing on this is I need to cut out my section for my stamp, so I'm gonna run profile pass all the way around. This is 0.72 inches, and it's gonna run to 0.7 inches. So I should have just a tiny little bit that I'll need to cut off by hand, and then I'll show you the next part. Yada, yada, yada. And you hold it. If you know, you know. With my toolpath loaded up, it's gonna take 40 minutes to cut. This is not a fast process. And the second that you try and kick up the speed is you're going to start breaking bits. This, focus. This was a 1/4 inch O-flute that I snapped. I bent the shank on this flattening bit. I also broke 1/16 inch. So anyways, you're gonna break some bits if you don't slow it down. So just slow down, it's fine. So the speed and feeds that I'm running on this, I think I'm running 18 or 20,000 RPM, 0.015 step down, and 15 inches per minute. So I'll make sure to put those up all on the screen, and away we go. First cut is done. I'll show you. You want to see? Do you want to see? Yeah, you do. Got just a little bit of skin left all the way around on it, which is perfect. So that was like 40 minutes, and it's super cool to the touch. You can see all the little brass bits, even though I was using dust collection, because I really don't want these everywhere in my shop. So I am doing dust collection just to a shop vac and not my dust collector, because I don't want to ruin my dust collector. So I am going to cut out the next two and go from there. So I got all 3 of those profiles done. For my 3 stamps, I got a little bit of extra material, which is going to be good. And just a teeny tiny amount holding it all together. Just bend these apart. There we go. So next what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take this, and I need to get it flattened down to thickness that I want. I'm gonna make a couple tool paths, and I'm gonna show you some new ways to do work holding with brass. So this is the best solution I came up with to properly hold down my brass, was to make an area clear tool path that was 0.007 of an inch larger than my workpiece, so that my brass would have a little bit of space just to slide on in, but not too much. Can't have too much. So with this carved into my sacrificial wasteboard, drops in like a glove. So now that's in there, nice and tight. It's not gonna move. So if the material heats up while I'm flattening it, it shouldn't shoot across the shop. This big 1/2 inch end mill. And then I'll show you guys the feeds and speeds I'm using for this to flatten out this piece of brass. And since I already have my XY position, all I need to do is probe for Z. Right in the butt. What? And this tool path is going to take about 25 minutes to take off 1/4 inch. Let's get to it. So I just stopped it that far in because this is how covered I am in just a minute. So it's kind of why I'm running dust collection on this, because it makes a mess of little brass filings everywhere. So you do you. I'm gonna run dust collection. So this is all nice and smooth and flush. My tramming's off a little bit, but it's fine. So it's not perfect, but we're good enough. So it's got a nice, clean finish on it. So what I have to do is take this and I have to flip it up on its edge because I want to start in milling down to make these little shoulders to slot into here. And to do that, I'm going to use a combination of 16th inch and an 1/8 inch end mills. Now, if you want to just see how to do the engraving, because at this point you could just start face engraving this thing, skip ahead to some section that's like here and watch that. But if you want to learn how to do slots, then keep watching. So we can put this that way. So to make that slot, I did it the exact same way as the larger slot insert. I just made it 1/2 inch deep so it would have a little more hold, a little more grab, and keep things a little straighter vertical up and down for when I did my milling. All right, it's got our slot drilled, and this guy, look at that. Look at that fit. So good, so good. And then I'm gonna mill this down all the way. Just make sure to remember to re-zero. Always re-zero. Always re-zero. So this will take 10 minutes. So the first tool path I'm running here is using a 1/8 inch O-flute bit, and I'll throw the feeds and speeds up. And what I'm doing is milling all the way down to this shoulder height. And once that is done, I'm going to be flipping out bits to a 1/16 inch bit, and I will then mill down from this first height, and I will mill all the way down to get my full shoulder. And to get the measurements for what I needed with my depths, I just took them off of the insert that I already had that was supplied with the heat embosser, or you can just use your calipers and figure out your own depths and measurements. So I got that edge all milled down. Next thing to do is change out bits. Gonna put in my 1/16 end mill. Oh God. And then going to carve just this bit right down in there. 6 minutes. Can you see that? Can you see that? Ooh. Ooh. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side. In this nice deep pocket. Let me push this all the way in. Nice full penetration. Ah! Careful. Pull out the 16th bit. Put the 1/8 inch bit back in. Run the first pass. Run the second pass. Just doing the exact same thing. One more time. Pull this out. Look at that. I can't see if you can see it or not. Let's test it out. So this is the side of the heat embosser. And, okay, got a little bit of a problem, but that's all right. Problem I have is I'm a little too high right here. So I'm going to just flatten off a tiny little bit of this, because I should be at about 0.077, and I am 0.0825. And to just pop this right back into, and I think that's not going to go anywhere, so I'm not going to do any safety glue. Just going to use the 1/2 inch end mill, and we're just going to jog it manually with the remote control. Zero our axis. Going to change to imperial, and I want 0.005. Drop that down, and should be able to run our one pass, and it should be good. Like that. So there's a little movement in it. It's not perfect, but you get the idea of how you have to do it, which is the important thing. And also, once this is in and good, and then it goes chunk, it'll be perfect. Okay, so I know it was a lot to get to that stage, but really, really important, because now I can start engraving on the face. So let's get that set up, go through the bits, go through the tool paths, and then engrave a logo. So I'm not going to go too deep into the vector images and how to do your tool pathing, because you should have a good solid basis on that before starting this project. But one thing you need to make sure of is that you mirror the image that you are making, because this is a stamp, so that when it gets flipped and stamped, it's actually going to show up the proper way. And the other thing you need to make sure of is you're going to be taking away the material around the letters and around the logo. So the way I'm going to do this might be a little contrary to how some other folks might do it, but this is just the way that I felt worked best and saved the most amount of time. So I am starting off with an area clear toolpath, and I'm selecting my logo and a little bit extra around the outer edge just for my area clear. And in that area clear, I'm going to be doing a depth of 0.09 inches, and I'm putting an allowance of 0.005. So what this is going to do is it's going to keep the bit 0.005 away from the vector line. And I'm doing that for a reason, and I'll tell you about it in a second. So for my tool list, I'm going to be using a 1/8 inch upcut. I'm going to do an offset strategy. And it says start on the inside, but you probably start on the outside. Start whatever side you want to do. Then I'm going to be running a 1/16 inch and a 1/32 inch. And we can see here what everything is going to take off. So the 1/8 inch is going to take off all of that material. The 1/16 inch is going to fill in this extra little gappy bits. And then the 1/32 is going to take off the rest. So after those area clears, I'm also going to make toolpathing for a V-bit carving. I'm going to have my maximum depth to be 0.09. Going to be using a 15-degree V-carve bit. And I'm not going to be doing a roughing pass on this because I've already done my roughing passes with my area clear. And you can also see in my toolpathing that I have these extra offset vectors created. So the outside one here is for my area clear to make sure that I go all the way past the edge of the stamp. And the second smaller one just goes around the logo. And that one's for my V-carve, mainly so it's not wasting time carving out unneeded empty space. And before I forget, the reason to run this 0.005 allowance on the area clear is because the V-bit is going to leave a angled profile running around the letters and the logo. So leaving it kicked out 0.005 allows that angle to still be present-ish. So here's the simulation for how all of those are going to go together. And I'm going to run them in a very specific order. I'm going to be doing my 1/8 inch and then my 1/16 inch area clears first. And then I'm going to actually run my V-carve. So that's going to take off a lot of the material and keep everything all nice and clean and crisp. And then I'm going to run my 1/32 at the very end just to clean up these teeny tiny little bits that are left over, mainly because I don't want to break my 1/32 inch bit because it's so wee. that all prepped and ready. First file, it's gonna take 14 minutes. Do the 1/8 area clear. $18,000 RPM. So that's the first tool path. I know it doesn't look like much yet, but just wait. Just wait. We're going to run the 16th inch next. So, yeah, it's a lot smaller. It's very small. It is wee, in fact. Wee. And if we can see that, this one's gonna take just under 30 minutes. See you after lunch. So here we go. After running that 1/16, we're getting there. We're getting there. So next bit, gonna be this 15-degree, like, needle bit. 1 hour. 1 hour. It's actually an excruciatingly long time. So, I'm gonna let this run. Be back in an hour. So the V-bit just finished up, and this thing is looking pretty good. It's probably actually good enough that you can pull it and use it just the way it is, but I'm gonna run the 1/32 bit just to make sure that all these little tiny bits and pieces are all gone and cleaned up. 1/32 of an inch. That's compared to a 1/4 inch bit. Little bit of a difference. 30 minutes. It's not bad. And there we go. Now it's done. It's nice and clean. I think it looks better. I think it looks pretty dang crisp. Ooh, this looks super crisp. So the last few things to take care of, it has a little bit of an edge burr here. And now, I'm going to drill a hole in here because I made a handle and I want to put it in a handle. I got my mark where I want to drill. I'm gonna mount my vise. Make sure that looks like it's going straight up and down. Tap, it's fine. This. There we go. Let's give it a whirl. Slides in nice. Gonna heat this guy up. I go 200 degrees. I don't know if that's Fahrenheit or Celsius, but we're gonna go to 200 and let that warm up. Emboss some leather. Okay, so we are up to temperature. Pop that in. That's all good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not too shabby. Pretty good, pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Ooh. That came out pretty good. So I am super, super happy with how all of this is turning out. Heat embossing. It's great. Gonna make a couple other stamps. These guys, with my other logos and button on it. Pretty much gonna do it the exact same way. The only difference is I'm gonna leave this 3/4 of an inch thick, and I'm going to put the screw in the bottom with the handle so I can, you know, yeah, you know. So gonna do that. Otherwise, it's really pretty much the same process. So I hope you learned something. Gonna put all of my feeds and speeds and things like that up on the screen so you guys can look at all of that stuff. I am in no way an expert at all on any of this. I have now made 2 brass stamps, and when I make my next 2, then I will have made 4. So take it as you will, but hopefully this is good starting off point, jumping off point to make a thing. And make it fit in another thing, which is pretty cool. So, thanks for watching, and later.